What's going on, everybody? Well, I finally, a little bit late to the party, finally finished Marvel's The Punisher, even representing him a little bit with this t-shirt. So now it's time to talk about and rank all of the Marvel Netflix shows that have been out so far. We have got 7, I believe, 7 seasons of this, yes, 7 different seasons of this Marvel Netflix incarnation. Something that felt like a dream come true when it first came out. It's slipped a little bit since then, but for the most part, I think there's more good than bad. But we're gonna get into that, starting with the bad. Number 7 is Iron Fist. I couldn't even finish this season. I literally got 3 episodes in, so some people are gonna call bullshit on that and say you didn't watch it all, you might have liked it later on, and it might have been higher on this list. You know what? Totally fair criticism, but you know, if I don't have the interest to keep watching, that to me merits being at the bottom of this list, because it's the only one of these shows that I could not sit through. It was so bad. Not the worst thing in the world, but as far as the quality change from like the shows that are up top to Iron Fist, it's a steep fucking decline. You've got the guy who plays Iron Fist, which I don't even remember his name, who's just a terrible actor. He has no screen presence. The way that the acting and the storytelling is just so weird and off-putting. Like even the fight scenes, it's supposed to be like the martial arts show, which Daredevil's already pretty much mastered. You would think it's even better, and the fight scenes, at least that I got to see, are just laughable. It's like, this isn't even really fighting, this is just kind of moving around. So I don't have much to say on Iron Fist. Like I said, I only got like 3 episodes in. I don't even think I finished the 3rd episode, but it was bad. And I think most people agreed that Iron Fist is the worst here. It's either people's number 7 or number 6, so I shouldn't get too much argument on this one, but number 7 to me, bottom of the barrel for the Netflix Marvel shows, is Iron Fist. Maybe season 2 they'll pull their head out of their ass, we shall see. Number 6, slightly controversial pick, is The Defenders. Now this to me was a show that I struggled to get through. It was a show that we had been kind of building up to. This is like the Avengers of this Marvel's Netflix, where everybody gets together and fights one big boss, and they've been leading up to it story-wise in both seasons of Daredevil, but to me this just felt so weak. It felt so anticlimactic and, you know, uninteresting. These characters get together and it just doesn't really feel like this big, grand, epic get together and this big collaboration that it should have been. It feels like all of the story directions, they take all the characters, Daredevil, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, and Luke Cage, the way that they take their characters from the end of their previous seasons and the way that they leave them off at the end of this Defenders, it feels like nothing really progresses with their characters. It's not like these big, huge changes where this really alters their storylines or their personality or anything like that. You could probably not even watch The Defenders and watch Jessica Jones season 2, Daredevil season 3, everything like that, Luke Cage season 2, and not miss a single beat. Like, there's nothing in this that felt grand. Like, there was some good character interaction, there was some pretty good dialogue, there was some entertaining scenes here and there, some pretty decent fight scenes when you see the different powers kind of come together, but to me, it was just a weak show. I was really bored. I was engaged for like the first 4 episodes, and luckily it was a shorter season. The last 4, I literally watched as I was editing and just kind of as background noise to keep up with what was going on, and I didn't hardly miss anything by watching it that way. So really uninteresting and unfortunate that that was kind of how this played out. But to me, number 6 is The Defenders. Didn't really care for it. Number 5, which was a very close thing about my number 6 and number 5, is Luke Cage season 1. Now this was a show that I was really looking forward to because it's a character that I know pretty much nothing about. Like, I know a lot about Daredevil, I knew a decent amount about Jessica Jones, but Luke Cage and Iron Fist were the 2 where I was like, I know nothing about them, this show should be great. And Luke Cage was great for like a quarter of it, a third of it maybe. There were some episodes that was really cool. It was this really kind of deep, dark, kind of Harlem blaxploitation kind of play as far as the music and everything like that. It was a really interesting tone, and it feels like it speaks to a lot of like the fans of that genre and that minority and people that live in that area, and that was all cool. But then it starts to get really campy. It starts to get really weird and really over the top. You have this switch of villains, and Diamondback is just such an over the top campy villain, and I don't know, the show got less interesting the longer it went on, and it was a struggle. It was the first Marvel Netflix show that I struggled to get through. Didn't end up liking it very much. So these bottom 3 are the ones that I would not recommend, but Luke Cage season 1, that is my number 5. Number 4 to me, which is another controversial pick, is the first season of Daredevil. Now from here up, these are all shows and seasons that I do recommend that I enjoy quite a bit. Now, Daredevil Season 1 was great. Introduced us to this Marvel Netflix feel, introduced us to the new version of Matt Murdock, introduced us to Wilson Fisk, or the Kingpin, which is probably the best part of this season. And it's a really good season overall, but to me, it's too long. It feels slow in spots, it feels stretched out in spots. If it was like an 8 or 9 episode season, it would be flawless. It'd probably be my number 1. But to me, just the season, and I haven't rewatched it since. Maybe if I rewatch it, I'll change my tune on this. But from my memory of watching it the first time, there's a bit of a lull towards the middle 2/3 of this season that really was tough to get through a couple episodes. It felt like it was just really dragging its feet. But the fight scenes, phenomenal, especially the hallway fight scene in, I believe, episode 2, which has kind of become like this trope in the Daredevil seasons. Wilson Fisk, phenomenal. Like, oh, dude, like one of the best villains that Marvel has ever produced on screen. Definitely better than their shit that they've had so far in 95% of their movies, as much as I love them. But yeah, Vincent D'Onofrio has been awesome as that. Charlie Cox as Daredevil has been great. All the side characters like fucking Nelson, Karen Page, all really good. Love the tone and the feel of this show, the way the fight choreography and everything is. Really, really good. Huge step up from what we knew as Daredevil, which was the Ben Affleck movie, which isn't as bad as people say it is, but it's still pretty bad. But like I said, it just kind of, it dragged a little bit for me. Now, like I said, controversial pick. Most people have this as number 2, possibly number 3. And my actual number 3 is probably going to ruffle a few feathers because my number 3 is Jessica Jones Season 1. Now, most people didn't quite like this season, but for whatever reason, I loved it. I loved everything about this season. I love Kristen Ritter. I think she's perfect for that role. I thought that it didn't quite get into the PI, private investigative stuff just yet, but just the way that the storyline played out as far as her and Kilgrave, which to me is the best villain that we've gotten in this Marvel Netflix series by far. Like Kilgrave, played by David Tennant, that's one of the coolest, most intimidating and frightening villains that I've seen in a superhero show, movie, anything ever. Like, he is awesome. He's probably 70% of the reason why this is the placement where it's at, but I just loved the story that it went on. I loved the twists and turns that it went through. I think that it had constant tension for the most part. I really, really enjoyed Jessica Jones Season 1. I don't remember a lot about some of the side characters. Like, I know her friend that's kind of rich and stuff like that. Like, I don't remember too much about that because I haven't watched it since it's debuted, but I remember loving this season all the way through. I could not stop watching it. I was just hitting the next episode every single night. It kind of had that Stranger Things effect on me where I just couldn't stop watching. And I enjoyed the entire season. I thought it was great. I thought it was a great breath of fresh air. It was something unlike anything else that I've seen as far as superhero shows. So I really enjoyed Jessica Jones Season 1. That is my number 3. Now, as far as my top 2, it wasn't really difficult to pick which one went where. It was difficult that, like, if you had asked me before I actually saw my number 2, I would have said for sure by the time that comes out, that's got to be my number 1 because I was anticipating it for so long. I love the character. I love the casting. But my number 2 is going to be The Punisher. And I just finished watching this last night, and I'm going to have my full review out, hopefully before I debut this ranking, but if not, shortly after. I'm probably going to debut it before just to make sure I don't spoil my review in this. But overall, my thoughts of the season, it was really, really, really good, but not quite The Punisher. Not quite the Punisher that I wanted, because The Punisher to me is just as evil and just as bad as the bad guys. He's murdering people left and right. He's brutal, he's vicious, and he's just killing people. He's a psychopath. That's the Punisher. And the show isn't quite capturing that, at least not yet. But what they do capture is you get an awesome performance by Jon Bernthal. You get a really kind of torn and haunted performance from him as Frank Castle, while also getting kind of the humanized, like, the charming side of him, which is a good kind of dichotomy to have. So I think Jon Bernthal's great. I loved what they did with the villain, like making Billy kind of, to me, the show, the season is more about the origin of Jigsaw than the origin of the Punisher, as far as the Punisher that I know him to be. So the origin and the way that they tell the story about how Jigsaw is created throughout this season, to me, is the biggest triumph of this season. I thought it was great. I thought it was a really cool, interesting, different take on that character, a very modern take. That's an example of changing comic book lore to fit your new story and doing it well. Doing it where the changes make sense and you still have the character as a core who he needs to be. So Jigsaw was awesome to me. The show overall felt a little bit too much like Homeland, which was good in some aspects as far as the character like Madoni and some of the other kind of espionage type storylines that were going on that was interesting throughout, but some of the other stuff just felt a little bit too much like Homeland, when the Punisher to me should feel more like revenge, brutality, murder throughout. And there's some awesome sequences in this. Like, I think the second to last episode, whenever people are raiding his little hideout and he's just mowing people down and blowing heads off and stabbing dudes, like, that whole sequence is what this season should have been in a nutshell for me. And it wasn't quite enough of that. There was enough for me to recommend it. There was enough to get it all the way up to my number 2, because I love the character. I love most of what they did, especially with the character Micro, and a lot of the side characters kind of enhancing the slower parts of the season is what made it to where the slower parts of the season didn't drag it down so much. But to me, this is the Punisher origin still, whereas the Punisher that we got in the first half of Daredevil Season 2 was much more of the Punisher that I want. So I'm curious where they're going to go in Season 2. I really hope they don't make Frank Castle too much of a hero like they are in this, because the dude's not a hero. That's just not who the character is. That's nice if you want to have a hero out there. Everybody loves the nice little pretty ribbon put on their characters about how much they love to root for them, but the Punisher's not a good guy. So they need to, for my own personal taste of who the Punisher is, if they do that in Season 2, if they push it more into that direction where he's a psycho, he's a murderer, he's actually just mowing down mob guys, and we'll get to see the actual Jigsaw after he becomes Jigsaw, what he's going to do hopefully in Season 2. That has the potential of being like my number 1, as well as being my number 1 Punisher, and just making this season so much better. But for me, really enjoyed it, but still scratching my head a little bit about what direction they're taking the Punisher, because to me, it's not quite the Punisher, but loved it nonetheless. That's my number 2, which leaves Daredevil Season 2 as my number 1 for many different reasons. To me, it was leaps and bounds better than Daredevil Season 1 for every reason. The action's better, the acting's better, the storyline's better. There's not as much of a slow dip in this season as there was in Season 1. The first half is Daredevil versus the Punisher. The second half is Daredevil and Elektra. Both of those characters are great. Like, Frank Castle and the Punisher getting introduced in this, and the way that they introduce it is awesome. Every single episode for like the first 6 episodes is like edge of your seat awesome. Like, everything about it. You hit episode 2 and you're like, man, that's going to be the best episode of this season. You hit episode 3, that was even better. They can't top this. You get to episode 4, that was even better. And it was just mind-blowing how good they did it. So all of that, the Elektra stuff was really good. Elektra's another character I had only been experienced to as far as the Jennifer Garner version, so I had a lot to learn about Elektra. This version of Elektra is much better. The relationship between those two, very complicated, very cool to see that play out on screen. I think the hallway fight scene in this season is way better than Season 1, which is phenomenal in its own right. So Season 2 of Daredevil to me was like a flawless season. Everything about it. I think the way that they leave it off was great as a tease for what's to come. And it also, I gotta love the Punisher. So the fact that I got the Punisher for the most part of what I know the Punisher to be, that brings it up just a little bit. But I love Daredevil Season 2. I can't wait for Daredevil Season 3. I cannot wait for it. I actually bought a hot toy, $200 and something of the Chris Cox Daredevil, because I love this show so much. So huge fan of Daredevil, and Season 2 is my number 1. So what do you guys think about my ranking? What is your ranking for these Marvel Netflix TV shows that we've gotten so far? Put your ranking down below. Put why, and put like some of the thoughts on the Punisher that I had. Put your thoughts on the Punisher, since that's the reason why I'm doing this. Do you feel like that nailed the Punisher, or are you kind of like me and you're still waiting for the true Punisher to come out? And do you think they're going to do that, or do you think they're going to kind of stick with this Homeland espionage type storyline and make Frank Castle more of an anti-hero? Put all your thoughts down below and we will talk about it. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. If you want to check out my social media links, I got Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter down in the comment section. The video description below. Don't go to the comment section, it's not there. As well as my Patreon link, which is a great way to give back to this channel, help this channel grow, financially fund this channel, but also get exclusive content for your eyes only if you decide to be a patron. So check that out, see what kind of perks I got for Patreons, guys. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, you can check out a few more by clicking right over here.